Welcome back to Resistance Rangers on the Air, the podcast broadcasting straight from the belly of the bureaucracy. I'm your host, Calamity Jane, and co-hosting this episode with me today is Maya. Happy 4th of July, everyone. If you've looked at a calendar today or stepped foot near a National Park Visitor Center, you know that the massive America 250 marketing machine is officially firing on all cylinders. We're talking parades, fireworks, and historical reenactments of 1776. But as rangers, interpreters, and history keepers, we aren't done sharing the truths that the standard narratives try to hide. So today, as the sparklers fly, we're asking a question that a lot of folks are thinking but might be hesitant to say out loud. Whose 250th birthday are we actually celebrating? Because if we only start the clock in 1776, we are chopping off the vast majority of our shared history.
Let's do a reality check. The United States as a political entity might be hitting 250 years old, but this land and its deep, complex human history is thousands of years old. Long before a bunch of wealthy guys in wigs sat down in a sweaty room in Philadelphia to sign a piece of parchment, this continent was a vibrant, deeply connected network of native nations. We're talking about vast ancestral earthworks, sophisticated systems of land and agricultural stewardship, and deeply rooted consensus-based systems of governance. In fact, the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, had a representative constitution that literally inspired the U.S. founders. But here's the reality for the hundreds of indigenous nations still here today. 1776 was not the dawn of liberty. It marked the acceleration of land theft, forced displacement, and broken treaties. For the original people of this land, today is not a celebration of a beginning. It is a testament to survival and continued resistance against erasure.
And then there's that heavy word, freedom. It's the centerpiece of every single 4th of July banner. But look at the ground reality of July 1776. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that, quote, all men are created equal, roughly 1/5 of the entire population in the newly formed United States was still enslaved. Think about the absolute paradox of that moment. If you were an enslaved black person in 1776, the rhetoric of the revolution did not mean liberation. In a weird, tragic twist of history, Great Britain was actually closer to abolishing slavery than the American colonists were. For hundreds of thousands of people, American independence consolidated the power of a slave-holding republic. It completely mirrors what Frederick Douglass famously asked in his legendary July 5th speech decades later. What, to the American slave, is your 4th of July? He pointed out that the day represents a celebration of freedom for those who won it, but for the oppressed, it's a glaring, painful reminder of the justice they were denied. The truth is, not everyone was having freedom in 1776.
So where does that leave us today? Do we just sit out the holiday completely? Well, not necessarily. But it means we change the perspective. America 250 should not just be about romanticizing a 250-year-old government or hiding the hard parts of our past. It should be about honoring the people who spent the last 250 years fighting, organizing, and resisting to make those hollow promises of freedom actually mean something for everyone. This milestone is an invitation to uncover the histories that standard textbooks left out. Our public lands hold all of these stories, the complicated, the heavy, and the resilient.
If I was in charge of the American 250th,
If I were running the 250 celebrations at my park,
If I were in charge of an A250 event, If I were in charge at the 250.
If I were in charge of an America 250 celebration at a national park, it would look like not a UFC match. I want people to realize that our national parks are often overlapping ancestral homelands and traditional cultural places. When the public visits these sites this July 4th, the message shouldn't be that these are untouched wildernesses. They're deeply managed, sacred landscapes. I want to amplify the concept of 7 generations, which is the understanding that we are caretakers for those who haven't arrived yet for the next 7 generations, just as our ancestors preserved this land for us. An inclusive 250 means moving past the myth of the empty frontier and recognizing that Indigenous knowledge is active, living, and essential for the future of these parks.
I want to amplify the story of the early Black park rangers and laborers who helped build and protect our public lands when the country was still deeply segregated. On the 250th, we need to remind the public that the stewardship of America's most beautiful spaces has always been a diverse effort, even when the laws of the country didn't reflect that equality. If I were in charge of the A250 celebration, it would look like a massive citizenship and naturalization ceremony.
I would make it be a music venue, like around the White House, and we could all just sing songs together about the U.S., like the national anthem and This Land Is Your Land. And I think we could also celebrate by taking a pause in all the wars around the world for one day, like a birthday ceasefire.
For me, it's 100% the actual text of the Declaration of Independence. I hadn't read it in years, but I did leading up to A250, and holy crap, the list of grievances the colonists had with the king are 90% the things the current administration is inflicting on the country today. I think everyone should read it.
For my 250 celebration, I want to uplift the story of Gilbert Baker, an artist and activist largely inspired by the U.S. flags flying everywhere for the United States bicentennial celebrations in 1976, to create the rainbow flag for LGBTQ+ civil rights. Gilbert said, "We needed something to express our joy, our beauty, our power. And the rainbow did that. The rainbow flag is a symbol of freedom and liberation that we made for ourselves."
If I were in charge of a 250th celebration at a national park, the theme would be Reclaiming the Outdoors. Historically, public spaces and parks haven't always felt safe or welcoming for Black communities due to segregation and systemic exclusion. An inclusive 250 means actively dismantling that legacy. It would look like funding urban youth outreach programs, bringing community elders out to the trails, and celebrating the long, rich history of Black environmentalism and joy in nature. Inclusion isn't just an invitation, it's making sure the space is genuinely ours to inhabit, rest in, and protect.
If I were in charge at the 250, I would do a nationwide call for art installations asking the question, what could America look like in 250 years from now? The contest would be free to enter, and children and regular people would all be encouraged to participate, as well as established artists. A panel of artists and curators from museums across the country would vote until 50 proposals were selected and funded, and then the National Mall would be transformed into a kaleidoscope of visions of our collective future, using soundscapes and dance and music and food and light and color to remind ourselves who we are and who we could be.
The story I want visitors to our NPS sites to hear on July 4th is that this country's amazing, complicated history and lands were shaped by millions of people in both conflict and collaboration, and we all have choices that can make a difference in how that history takes shape from here.
If I were running the 250 celebrations at my park, it wouldn't just be about fireworks and flags. It would look like a massive community campfire. I'd bring in local tribal leaders, historians, poets, and musicians to share what this land means to them. It would be a day of deep listening, outdoors storytelling, and community building, reminding people that our national parks are literally our shared common ground.
If I were in charge of an A250 event, it would include multiple perspectives because the founding of America and this 250th anniversary means something different for different people.
Something that represents an inclusive America to me is immigrants. They are a part of my family story and part of what it means to me to be part of a country that defines itself by democracy and liberty, regardless of ethnicity.
If I was in charge of the 250th birthday of America party in Washington, D.C., it would be an all-inclusive party with everyone, with everybody, with drinks, snacks, and plenty of fun historic games. It would be a giant potluck with foods of all different kinds, from all different regions and religions, from the simplest dishes to the most delicate of cuisines, and no food or people would be left out.
If I were in charge of an America 250 event at my imaginary national park or park area, the first thing that comes to mind that I would want to do is a dang old good old-fashioned barbecue with some hot dogs. But that leaves out so much history, so much knowledge, and so much that we need to amplify and remember about our country. I think we can do both things, right? I think we can celebrate the way we've celebrated for many years. We can all dress up in our red, white, and blue Old Navy t-shirts. But I think it's important to point out the history of our country and how, we're not that great. I think there's a lot that people kind of push to the side and try to forget, which is understandable. It's hard to think about that stuff that we did. It's stuff that we still do, honestly. But there's room for both. There's room to celebrate and there's room for education. And I wish more people thought about that during this summer holiday. There's a lot to learn and there's a lot that we can come together and celebrate. Okay, I love you. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, Rangers. As you head out onto the trails or spend time with family today, keep questioning the narrative, keep telling the whole truth, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Ranger on, everyone.
You're listening to Resistance Rangers on the Air. This podcast is produced by Resistance Rangers, a grassroots volunteer collective. The views expressed here are those of the host and guests who may or may not be current employees, speaking solely in their personal capacities. For any hosts and guests who may or may not be current employees, this is not a part of any official duties. We are not affiliated with the National Park Service, the Department of the Interior, or any other government agency. Nothing said on this podcast should be interpreted as official policy, guidance, or endorsement.